This is the Cubs Postcast, your instant game reaction for the Chicago Cubs. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
What's up, everybody? Welcome into a late edition of the Cubs Postcast here on the Locked On Cubs YouTube channel, Locked On MLB Today, and the Locked On Sports Today YouTube channel. Joe George here with you as the Cubs. They got the win today, 3-1 over the San Diego Padres. They take game one of the wild card series. There is a ton to get through in this game. Matt and Sam were live earlier today, so if you missed that show, make sure you guys check them out as well. It'll be the same schedule for after game two tomorrow as well, where they'll go live and I will join later in the day. But the pitching staff was fantastic, really from start to finish. We'll discuss that, the player of the game, the turning point of the game, what we saw overall just from the bats, because it wasn't all good, even though the Cubs got the victory. So we'll dissect all of that. But we're going to start today's show off with our turning point of today's game.
Time to reveal where the game was won or lost. It's the turning point.
Okay, so I think the Cubs won this game in one really simple area where you look at, yes, you got the back-to-back home runs. We'll get to all of that stuff. But to me, this game is won very clearly here in the top of the second inning. You've got back-to-back doubles to start the inning. It's 1-0 and a runner on second base with no outs. And Matthew Boyd has to come through in this game to keep the Cubs where they're at. They have to find a way to not let the Padres get more than one run on the board, and they're able to do that. That, to me, is why it's the turning point. To be able to get O'Hearn, Sheets, and then Cronenworth all out without allowing another runner to score, that is where it's like, okay, the Cubs can be okay in this game. If we see Matthew Boyd fold under the pressure of being in a playoff environment, which we know was very emotional when you watched his press conference yesterday. It was hard not to be emotional, honestly, watching it, to hear what it meant to him to be starting this game for the Cubs and, you know, talking about his grandfather and everything. But that moment there is really where the game is won for the Cubs. Like, yes, you have to score runs, and Pivetta was awesome in this game, to be honest, for the Padres. But if Matthew Boyd allows a couple hits to go through and all of a sudden it's 2-0, it's 3-0, you're just putting yourself in a deficit that would have been really challenging to overcome, because we saw how good he was, you know, for the Padres. We saw guys like Mason Miller in this game who's throwing 103 miles an hour. This pitching staff for the Padres is electric, basically, from start to finish, especially on a day like today. So to be able to get out of that inning in the second without giving up more than one run was massive. And then it just kind of continues throughout the entire game. But before we do that, we got to highlight Dansby Swanson and what he did. He's not going to get our Locked On Player of the Game. We'll get to that next. But Dansby Swanson today had phenomenal plays defensively, and that's not surprising. But this is a guy that I think catches a lot of heat from Cubs fans, and I think at times it's probably fair. But this is what you pay Dansby Swanson for, is for the defensive plays, whether it's the diving play there, the play where he's running out into the outfield, making a great catch. He was everything you could have asked for and more from your Gold Glove caliber shortstop. He made the plays that you needed to in this game. So he deserves a lot of credit, because when the Padres had, you know, opportunities to get hit, it just felt like Dansby was there. And it was a day that was typical Wrigley, right? Like we saw Ian Happ, Seiya Suzuki, the Padres players, all of them having to shield their eyes out there. And it felt like this game, honestly, I think it's a key thing to watch for tomorrow, which we'll talk more about, is the shadows and the way that it played. And while it didn't really hurt either team today, it does feel like it may play a factor in tomorrow's game, because it was not easy out there in the outfield. But what Dansby was doing on the infield was just spectacular. He was just dominating in every way that you could ask your shortstop to. Gets a big hit later in the game as well. It's Dansby was just fantastic for the Chicago Cubs. And it wasn't just Matthew Boyd who was good in this game, because he was. And we saw Craig Counsell stick to the strategy that he stuck with this entire season. And it makes a ton of sense, because when you do look at Matthew Boyd's numbers, the third time through the order, they're not that good. He is not, and that's not uncommon. Like, we know that. It's not uncommon to see guys struggle the third time through the order. So the fact that Craig Counsell pulled him in the way he did today, I thought was really good managing. 4 in the third, gives it 4 hits, only 1 run, allowed obviously a walk and 2 strikeouts. But this is what you made Craig Counsell a $40 million man to be a manager of a team that's going to win you playoff games. And I think the way that he approached this game is perfect, honestly, with Boyd, taking him out when you did, giving him a chance to face Tatis like you did. Tatis gets the hit. Here comes Daniel Palencia, who pitches an inning and 2/3, strikes out 2 guys, doesn't give up a hit. There's going to be a theme here. Drew Pomeranz doesn't give up a hit in his 1 inning. Andrew Kittredge, who was another guy who Cubs fans were not so sure about when they got him at the deadline, he also doesn't give up a hit. And then Keller comes in and shuts the door and gets the save. The bullpen was everything you could ask for and more. They were dominant in this game. In a game in which you're playing the Padres, who have a dominant bullpen, the Cubs bullpen was just as good. It is, I think it's the recipe for success at this point. Some combination of what we saw today with Palencia coming in, whether it's Pomeranz or Thielbar, and then handing it off to Kittredge and Keller. That, to me, is the recipe for success for the Cubs in the postseason. They shouldn't change, this plan at all. What we're seeing from Daniel Palencia is awesome. It's a guy that was struggling before he got hurt, and he was on point today, throwing 101 mile an hour, just gas right at the San Diego Padres. I like him a lot in this role, not just because it got shaky for sure again, but he looks just comfortable. He looks healthy, and using him in that situation is great. So if your pitcher gets you 6 innings, let's say Shota gets you 6 innings tomorrow, and you've got a lead, I would go Palencia or Thielbar or Pomeranz, just depending if it's a lefty matchup, it just depends on Thielbar or Pomeranz. If it's a righty heavy group, you're going with Palencia. Then you hand it off to Kittredge and you hand it off to Keller. And the Cubs can win playoff games that way. If you get this level of pitching, you can find a way to win baseball games, even when they're striking you out a ton, because the lineup wasn't perfect today. And we'll take our break here in a second and talk about that on the other side. But, we saw a level of performance that is really impressive. Going from a guy that no one really would have believed in before the season started in Pomeranz, and honestly Keller as well. I don't think there was high hopes of that. But Palencia, who started the year in the minors, was your closer for a majority of the season, has now been removed from that role in favor of Keller and Kittredge, who you got at the deadline. Like that's a W for Jed Hoyer, at least for today. In history right now, it's one game. History tells you it's a small history. There has never been a team that has won the wild card series in the 3 years that's existed that hasn't won the first game of the series. They're 12-0. The team that wins the first game is 12-0 in these 3-game wild card series. The Padres have to win the next 2 games to advance in the playoffs. So the Cubs definitely have the leg up in this one. And it was a great day. It was, and it looked incredible. I haven't had that much FOMO in my life in a very long time. Wrigley Field was bumping, it looked like. I mean, Dan says here in the chat, is there any better atmosphere than playoff Wrigley? I don't know. I don't think so. I mean, it's been – I think back to the World Series in 16 and being there for Game 3 and what that was like, and going to playoff games when I was younger and seeing this team. But, this is a fan base that's starved for playoff success, especially if you root for all the other Chicago teams. So it was incredible, the environment there at Wrigley Field today, and I cannot wait to see what it's like tomorrow, because I think they'll even be able to turn it up a notch as well. All right, we'll take our break here. We'll get to our Locked On Player of the Game and what you'll be talking about, plus more of your questions and comments, and we'll talk about what we saw from the lineup in this one. That's all coming up next year on the Locked On Cubs postcast. Today's episode is brought to you by Nutrafol. You've probably seen a million ads for hair growth products and thought, sure, like that actually works. There are so many products out there, and it's hard to know which ones are actually going to do anything, and that's why you should give Nutrafol a closer look. Nutrafol is the #1 dermatologist recommended hair growth supplement brand, trusted by over 1.5 million people, and now Nutrafol is the official hair growth partner of Major League Baseball. You can feel great about what you're putting into your body, since Nutrafol growth supplements are backed by peer-reviewed studies and NSF content certified, the gold standard and third-party certifications of supplements. See thicker, stronger, and faster-growing hair with less shedding in just 3 to 6 months with Nutrafol. For a limited time, Nutrafol is offering our listeners $10 off your first month subscription and free shipping when you go to Nutrafol.com and enter the promo code LOCKEDONMLB. Find out why Nutrafol is the best-selling hair growth supplement brand at Nutrafol.com, spelled Nutrafol.com, promo code LOCKEDONMLB. That's Nutrafol.com, promo code LOCKEDONMLB.
This episode is brought to you by FanDuel. The NFL season is here, and FanDuel is making sure you're ready for kickoff with a can't-miss offer. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. So are you ready to play? Download the FanDuel app now by visiting FanDuel.com to get started. That's FanDuel.com to place your first $5 bet.
Before we go any further, let's get to our Locked On Player of the Game.
This is the Locked On Player of the Game.
So it's hard to choose one guy. You could choose the entire pitching staff. You could choose a variety of guys in the lineup, but I'm going to choose Seiya Suzuki. Another home run today to get the Cubs on the board, then followed by Carson Kelly, the back-to-back jacks to give the Cubs the 2-1 lead. Again, you could choose anyone. There's no wrong answer, frankly. You could choose Nico Horner. You could choose Dansby Swanson for what we highlighted earlier in the show with the defensive plays that he was putting out there and supporting his pitching staff today as the shortstop of this team. But I'm going to go Seiya because Seiya Suzuki is on a heater. He is, 5 straight games now with the home run. He's seeing the ball well. He's hitting it deep. And it felt like he could have had another one in this game. He is just in pre-All-Star break form. And it is a wonderful, wonderful surprise. Because as someone says here in the chat here, let's see where to go. You can shut down 4 to 5 guys in the Cubs lineup. You can't shut down 1 through 9. And look, and we've seen them shut down 1 through 9 before. Like it's been times this year. But the Cubs have enough bop in their lineup that they can win games like this, where 1 or 2 home runs can be the difference maker, especially again when you get this level of performance from your pitching staff. But Michael Busch goes 1 for 3. Nico Horner, shocker, 2 for 3. You put on Michael Busch, you bring up Nico Horner, a runner gets to third base on a bad throw, and all of a sudden here comes Nico Horner getting the sac fly to make it 3-1. I honestly was shocked they did that because if you you should know the numbers about Nico Horner, what he does with runners in scoring position, and then he's one of the best players in baseball at it. So it's not a surprise. Now, on the negative with this game, because as much positive as there is, we can't ignore in victory what we wouldn't in defeat. The Cubs did strike out quite a few times. They struck out 13 times. But remember this. It was only 2 weeks ago that was pointed out in the Cubs broadcast on Marquee. The Cubs are above 500. The Cubs have the best record in baseball this season, actually, when they strike out 10 or more times. It shows you that while, yes, you can attack this team, and the Padres did today, Pivetta was very, very good. You can have 1 or 2 moments that if you get the good enough pitching performance like the Cubs got, that you can get the victory. So even though, yes, it's a lot of strikeouts and you want to see that be different, specifically against Dylan Cease tomorrow, who's had kind of a roller coaster year. He's been good, but there's been moments where he hasn't been. I think you can get that game and end this thing tomorrow, but you have to, drop the strikeout number tomorrow. That's to me is going to be the key to winning game 2. And just for a big picture perspective, that if the Cubs want to make a deep run here, you have to drop those numbers just a little bit. You're not, even though yes, they have again the best record in baseball when they have 10 or more strikeouts in a game, that's not going to be a recipe for success very often. You're not going to win a ton of playoff games like they did today. But they had 6 hits. They out-hit the Padres. But that's, again, because the bullpen was just absolutely fantastic. Dan Wynn says Pete couldn't have been possibly more amped up. Yeah, I mean, he's definitely guilty, chasing the high stuff like crazy. And then Pivetta gets him with the nasty curveball low and inside. And that's kind of the book on Pete Crow-Armstrong. That's one thing for me for the rest of the postseason, however long it goes, is they're going to attack the Cubs pitchers, weaknesses at an extreme level, especially if you advance into a 5 and 7 game series where they really, really know your weaknesses. Pete Crow-Armstrong is going to have to do something he hasn't done all year, and that's be patient. He's going to get some. He's going to get a hold of some, and they're going to go very, very far at Wrigley Field or other places. But you really need to see him kind of, I think, dial it back just a little bit with chasing stuff, and that's a big ask. It's something we've been asking for all year, but it's just they're going to attack that pretty relentlessly, specifically that high fastball and the low curveball like we saw in the strikeout in the game against Pivetta. That's going to be where they're going to key on you. And yes, again, we've seen him golf out low and inside, very low and inside home runs, but would just rather him take it, especially because if they're going to be doing that stuff, like the thing with PCA is if he takes these pitches at all, he's more likely to get a fastball in the middle of the zone and be able to crank that thing. And if he gets a free base, we know what he can do. He can take second and third against these teams, and he can be a weapon for you on the base pass. So if you can get him going and try to avoid some of that stuff, that just adds to it. Kyle Tucker, obviously 0 for 3 on the day. I saw some stuff on social media about playing Ballesteros instead. We're not going to see that. Kyle Tucker is going to be in this lineup. And that would shock me. And I think he looks okay. I wouldn't say he looks great at the plate, but I think he looks serviceable. We did see, obviously, the rollover to first base. That's very typical of a Kyle Tucker struggle. But for Kyle Tucker, it's going to be there needs to be a level of patience. Now, there obviously has to be a moment where you can't, you can't allow that to happen. Like, you have to make an adjustment if he can't be, competitive in these at-bats. But I wouldn't call Kyle Tucker's at-bats uncompetitive, I would say. Let's see. Questions and comments here in the chat. Good win, but as a Cubs fan, still worried about what kind of game they're going to get out of Shota tomorrow. Yeah, it's rightfully so. He's given up a ton of home runs this year, mostly solo. But this is a team in the Padres that they can bang, and they can hit bombs, and they can be a problem for the Cubs, and they can be a problem for Shota Imanaga. I know they've been talking a lot about his mechanics and trying to get those right because of how much he relies on them. But for the Cubs to win in Game 2, he's going to have to be not what he's been. That's a big ask too, but he's going to have to be, just not that. All right, before we wrap up here for this show today, let's get to what you'll be talking about after this win.
This is what you'll be talking about.
I think, honestly, like besides Game 2 and who's on the mound and how it's going to go and the Kyle Tucker conversation we just had in this one, I think the biggest thing the Cubs fans are feeling right now is just relief. First playoff win since 2018. Seeing them get this done today at Wrigley Field, as up and down as this season has been, it was awesome. Like I was telling my friends up here at my radio station, I was feeling nervous before this game, a feeling that we haven't gotten enough as Cubs fans. I already feel it for tomorrow as well, but it's only one game. Got to win at least one. You got to win one more to advance to take on the Milwaukee Brewers in the National League Division Series. But for today, it was awesome again to see Wrigley Field bumping like that and the way it was, how loud the crowd was, how full the stands were. All of that was incredible. And hopefully the Cubs can just get the W tomorrow. We can do another one of these shows around 6:15 tomorrow as well. And the Cubs will be advanced to the next round of the playoffs. So thank you guys for watching, for listening, as most of you have for all season. For our new listeners on the Locked On MLB channel today and Locked On Sports Today, thanks for hanging out with us here as well. Same schedule tomorrow. Matt and Sam will be live immediately after the game. I have my radio show till 6, so I'll be jumping on here on the YouTube channel at 6:15, and probably be similar if they have to play a game on Thursday, but hopefully they do not. So thank you all for watching. Remember, hit that subscribe button right here to the Locked On Cubs YouTube channel, plus wherever you get your podcasts on Apple and Spotify. Go Cubs. Glad they got the victory, and they're back in the playoffs. We'll talk to you tomorrow after Game 2 of this series and hopefully a wild card clincher. Have a good one. Good night, and peace.